The Handshake Deal, Episode 1, The Dream Part 2. Trust takes years to build, but sometimes it only takes a few seconds to destroy. For 6 years, Daniel believed he was a co-owner. For 6 years, Michael believed he was a co-owner. For 6 years, both men sacrificed their time, money, and energy to build a company they thought belonged to all three of them. They had poured their savings into the business. They had missed family gatherings. They had worked through countless weekends and sleepless nights. They had done everything entrepreneurs do to build something meaningful. Now, sitting inside the bank, Daniel was hearing something impossible, something that made no sense. Something that threatened to destroy everything he had worked for. Bank manager. The records are very clear. Samuel is listed as the sole owner. Daniel, there must be a mistake. There has to be a mistake. I've been running this company for 6 years. I'm a co-owner. Bank manager. These documents were filed years ago. They have been on record with the government since the company was first registered. According to our system, there is only one registered owner. Only one individual has legal authority over this company. Daniel stared at the screen. The words blurred before his eyes. His heart pounded so loudly he could hear it in his ears. The manager noticed his distress and paused, offering a moment of silence. The manager printed several pages and slid them across the desk. Daniel reached out with trembling hands. He looked down at the documents, and there it was. Samuel's name, again and again. Owner, director, shareholder, authorized representative. The sole person with legal control over everything they had built together. No mention of Daniel. No mention of Michael. Just Samuel. Page after page confirmed the same devastating truth. The room suddenly felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in around him. His hands began to shake uncontrollably. He could barely breathe. 6 years. 6 years of work. 6 years of sacrifice. 6 years of trust. And legally, he owned absolutely nothing. The company he had helped build from nothing belonged entirely to someone else. Someone he had called a friend. Someone he had trusted like a brother. Daniel left the bank in silence. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't make any phone calls. He simply walked to his car and sat behind the steering wheel for what felt like an eternity. His mind was racing. His thoughts were scattered. He couldn't process what had just happened. He couldn't understand how 6 years of friendship and hard work could be reduced to a few pieces of paper. The drive back to the office felt longer than usual. Every traffic light seemed to take forever. Every mile felt like 10. Questions raced through his mind at lightning speed. Had Samuel planned this from the very beginning? Was it all part of some elaborate scheme? Was it an innocent accident, a misunderstanding that could be easily corrected? Had there been some clerical error that could be fixed with a single phone call? Or had they been deceived for years, manipulated by someone they had trusted with their lives and their livelihoods? He replayed every conversation he had ever had with Samuel, every meeting, every late night at the office, every celebration of their successes, every moment of shared struggle. Had it all been a lie? Had Samuel been secretly planning this all along? The questions tormented him. When Daniel arrived at the office, he walked directly into Michael's office without knocking. He didn't say a word. He simply placed the documents on the desk. Michael looked up from his computer and immediately noticed Daniel's pale face and shaking hands. "Michael, you look terrible. What happened? Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Daniel pointed at the documents without speaking. Michael picked them up and began reading the first page, then the second, then the third. The color slowly disappeared from his face. His expression shifted from curiosity to confusion to disbelief to horror. By the time he reached the final page, he was white as a sheet. "Michael, what is this? Where did you get this? What does this mean?" "Daniel, according to the government records, Samuel owns everything." "Everything, Michael. The company we built together. The company we sacrificed everything for. It all belongs to Samuel. Legally, we own nothing." "Michael, no, that's impossible. That can't be right. There must be some mistake. We started this company together. We all agreed. Equal partners. Equal owners. Remember the cafe? Remember the handshake?" "Daniel, that's exactly what I thought. That's exactly what I told the bank manager. But the documents are official. They're government records. They're real, Michael. This isn't a mistake. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is real." Michael continued reading. Each page made the situation worse. The evidence was undeniable. Everything pointed to Samuel. The company had been registered in his name alone. He was the sole director, the sole shareholder, the sole person with any legal rights to the business. There was no mention of Daniel or Michael anywhere in any official document. For several minutes neither man spoke. They simply sat in stunned silence, staring at the papers that had just destroyed their world. The office that had once felt like a place of achievement now felt like a prison. The company they had built together now felt like a lie. Finally, Michael looked up. His eyes were filled with a mixture of anger and hurt that Daniel had never seen before. "Michael, we need answers. Immediately. We need to confront him right now. I want to look him in the eye and hear him explain this. I want to see his face when he tries to justify what he's done. Daniel, he's not here. He's at a client meeting. But he'll be back soon. We'll wait. Michael, I don't know if I can wait. I don't know if I can sit here and pretend everything is normal. I feel like I'm going to be sick." At that exact moment, Samuel was returning from his client meeting. He was in a good mood. The meeting had gone well. The client had agreed to expand their contract. More revenue, more growth, more success. He entered the office, carrying his briefcase and a smile on his face. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed perfect. "Samuel, good news, everyone. The client wants to expand the contract. This is huge for us. This is going to double our revenue next quarter. We should celebrate." Neither Daniel nor Michael responded. They just stared at him with expressions that Samuel couldn't quite read. The silence was deafening. Samuel immediately noticed the tension in the room. The atmosphere had shifted. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. "Samuel, what's wrong? Did something happen? Is everything okay? You both look like you've seen a ghost. What's going on?" Daniel slowly pushed documents across the table without saying a word. Samuel looked down at the papers. The moment he saw them, his expression changed. Only slightly. But enough for Daniel to notice, enough for Michael to notice, enough to confirm their worst fears. There was a flicker of recognition in his eyes, a moment of panic, a brief flash of guilt that disappeared almost as quickly as it had appeared. Daniel, tell us this isn't true. Tell us this is a mistake. Tell us there's an explanation that makes this all okay. Tell us we're still partners. Silence filled the room like a heavy fog. Samuel looked at the documents, then at his friends, then back at the documents. He seemed to be searching for the right words, searching for an explanation that would make everything better. But he couldn't find one. Samuel, where did you get these? How did you find out about this? Michael, answer the question, Samuel. Is it true? Did you register the company in your name alone? Did you cut us out of everything? Did you steal our company? Samuel sat down slowly. He placed his briefcase on the floor and ran his hand through his hair. For several seconds he said nothing. He just stared at the documents in front of him. Then he took a deep breath. Samuel, they're real. The documents are real. I registered the company in my name. The room exploded. Michael stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. Their voices rose in unison, a mixture of anger, disbelief, and heartbreak. Michael, real? What do you mean they're real? You actually did this. You actually registered the company in your name alone? After everything we've been through together? After everything we sacrificed? Daniel, how could you do this to us? We trusted you. We believed in you. We treated you like family. How could you betray us like this? Samuel, I registered the company. That's true, but I didn't do it to steal anything. I did it because someone had to. At the time, it seemed easier. It seemed simpler. Daniel, in your name, without telling us? How was that easier? How was that simpler? Samuel, at the time, it seemed like the most practical solution. We needed to get the company registered quickly. We needed to start operating. We needed to sign contracts and open bank accounts. Someone had to take responsibility for the paperwork. I was the one handling the administration anyway. It just made sense at the moment. Michael, easier? Easier for whom? Easier for you? You made yourself the owner of everything we built together. You made yourself the sole shareholder. You made yourself the only person who legally owns this company. How is that easier for us? Daniel slammed his hand onto the table again. The sound echoed through the office. His face was red with anger. His voice was shaking. Daniel, we invested everything into this company. Everything. Our savings. Our time, our energy. Our relationships. Our health. We gave up everything for this business. And you're telling me that you just decided to put it all in your name? Without even asking us? Without even telling us? Samuel, and I handled all the legal responsibility. I handled all the paperwork. I handled all the filings. I handled the registration. I handled the taxes. I handled everything that nobody else wanted to deal with. I didn't do this to betray you. I did this to protect the company. Michael, that's not the point, and you know it. The point is you made yourself the owner. The point is you excluded us. The point is you lied to us for 6 years. 6 years, Samuel. Every single day you looked us in the eye and pretended we were partners. Samuel, we were partners. We are partners. The paperwork doesn't change that. Our agreement was always clear. Equal partners, equal owners, friends forever. Nothing has changed. Michael, nothing has changed? Are you kidding me? Legally, you own everything. Legally, we own nothing. How can you say nothing has changed? Samuel, someone had to sign the documents. Someone had to be the registered owner. It was just a formality. It didn't mean anything. Michael, you could have added our names. You could have registered the company in all 3 names. You could have been transparent about what you were doing. You could have told us. You could have asked us. But you didn't. You chose to do it alone. You chose to cut us out. Samuel looked away. For the first time, he had no immediate answer, no justification, no explanation that could undo what he had done. He had been caught. The truth was finally out, and there was no way to take it back. The room fell silent again. But this silence felt different from before. It was no longer confusion. It was no longer disbelief. It was betrayal. Deep, painful, devastating betrayal. The kind of betrayal that changes everything. The kind of betrayal that can never be fully repaired. The next few days became a nightmare. Arguments filled the office. The atmosphere that had once been collaborative and friendly became toxic and hostile. Employees noticed the tension. They whispered among themselves, wondering what had happened. Rumors spread like wildfire. No one knew the full story, but everyone could feel that something was terribly wrong. Meetings became uncomfortable. Decisions that had once been made collaboratively were now fought over. People who had once worked like brothers now barely spoke to each other. The company that had once been a source of pride became a source of constant stress. Daniel and Michael hired a lawyer. They needed answers, not assumptions, not emotions, facts. They needed to understand their legal position. They needed to know if there was any way to recover what had been taken from them. They needed to know if their years of hard work counted for anything in the eyes of the law. Several days later, they sat inside a law office reviewing documents with their attorney. The lawyer examined everything carefully. He read through bank records, investment receipts, emails, and meeting notes. He asked detailed questions about the company's history and the founding agreement. He listened carefully to their story. Lawyer, this situation is serious, very serious. I need to be honest with you about your legal position. Daniel, can we prove we're owners? Can we prove we have a claim to this company? Lawyer, did you sign a partnership agreement when you started the company? Was there any written contract between the 3 of you? Silence filled the room. Daniel and Michael exchanged worried glances. Michael, no. There was no partnership agreement. We didn't think we needed one. We were friends. We trusted each other. Lawyer, do you have written ownership percentages? Did you document who owned what share of the business? Daniel, no. We didn't document anything. We just agreed to be equal partners. It was a verbal agreement. A handshake. Lawyer, any shareholder agreement? Any corporate governance documents that outline ownership structure? Michael, no, nothing. We handled everything informally. Samuel was supposed to handle the paperwork. We trusted him completely. The lawyer leaned back in his chair. His expression revealed genuine concern. He had seen cases like this before. He knew how difficult they were to resolve. Lawyer, then proving ownership becomes much harder than you might expect. Without written documentation, the courts will have to rely on other evidence. Bank records, investment receipts, emails, testimony from employees and clients. Anything that can demonstrate the original agreement between you. Daniel felt sick. His stomach churned. Years of trust had left them completely vulnerable. Years of friendship had given them a false sense of security. Years of believing that trust was enough had led them to this moment. Lawyer, never build a business on assumptions. Ownership must be documented. The law requires clarity. Friendship is not legal evidence. Verbal agreements are difficult to enforce. Handshakes are not contracts. I need you to understand this. The words hit hard because they were true. Every word was true, and hearing them spoken out loud made the situation feel even more hopeless. Over the next several weeks, lawyers on both sides gathered evidence. Bank records were subpoenaed, investment receipts were collected, emails were reviewed, messages were examined, meeting notes were analyzed. Anything that could demonstrate the original agreement was collected and organized. The case was building toward a legal showdown. Meanwhile, Samuel hired his own legal team. He had resources to fight back. He had documents to support his position. He was prepared to defend himself. The friendship was officially over. What had started with a handshake was now becoming a legal war. The three men who had once dreamed together were now preparing to fight each other in court. News spread throughout the business community. Clients heard rumors and became concerned. They wondered if their contracts were still valid. They worried about the stability of the company. Competitors paid attention, sensing weakness and opportunity. They began approaching clients, offering alternative services. Employees worried about their jobs. They didn't know if the company would survive the conflict. Investors became nervous. They questioned whether they should continue supporting the business. The conflict threatened to destroy everything they had built. One evening, Daniel sat alone in the original cafe where it had all begun. The same table, the same corner, the same place where three friends had once dreamed about the future, the same place where they had shared coffee and excitement and possibility. Now he sat there alone. The memory hurt more than he had expected. A waitress approached the table. "Waitress, another coffee?" Daniel nodded without looking up. As she walked away, he looked at the empty chairs around him. 6 years earlier, those seats had been filled with excitement. They had been occupied by his best friends, his partners, his brothers. Now they represented everything he had lost. Not just financial loss, the loss of friendship, the loss of trust, the loss of something that could never be fully repaired, the loss of a dream that had once seemed so bright. He ordered his coffee and sat in silence, watching the rain fall outside the window, the same kind of rain that had fallen on the day they had made their handshake agreement. The irony was not lost on him. Months later, the case finally reached court. The courtroom was crowded. Employees attended, wanting to see the outcome. Business reporters attended, eager to write about the case. Friends and family attended, supporting their loved ones. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to understand how three friends could end up in such a bitter legal battle. The judge reviewed the evidence carefully. Every document was examined. Every statement was considered. Every argument was evaluated. For days, witnesses testified. Employees described how the company had been built. They explained how all three founders had worked together, contributed equally, and made decisions collectively. Clients described working with all three founders. They explained how Daniel and Michael had been just as involved in the business as Samuel. Financial records showed contributions made by Daniel and Michael. They had invested their own money. They had sacrificed their own savings. They had worked without salaries in the early days. The evidence painted a complicated picture. Legally, Samuel held ownership documents. He was the registered owner. He was the sole shareholder. He had the legal authority. But practically, all three men had built the company together. They had shared the work. They had shared the sacrifices. They had shared the successes. The moral claim was clear, even if the legal claim was not. The judge listened carefully. Every document mattered. Every statement mattered. Every detail mattered. The court was patient and thorough. After weeks of testimony, the judge reached a decision. Aired. The judge acknowledged that Daniel and Michael had clearly contributed to building the company. The evidence showed years of work, investment, and participation. The judge also acknowledged that the three men had intended to be equal partners. The evidence of their original agreement was compelling, even without written documentation. However, the absence of formal agreements had created enormous legal uncertainty. The judge noted that verbal agreements, while valid in principle, were difficult to enforce. The law preferred written documentation. The law required clarity. The law demanded proofs. The court ordered a settlement. Ownership would be restructured to reflect the contributions of all three founders. Compensation would be provided to Daniel and Michael for their years of work and investment. Future governance rules would be established to prevent similar disputes. The company would be governed by written agreements going forward. The company survived. The legal battle ended. But the friendship did not. The trust was gone. The bond that had held them together was broken beyond repair. When the hearing ended, the three men left through separate doors. No handshakes, no smiles, no celebration, just silence, just the sound of footsteps echoing in the hallway, just the memory of what had once been. Years later, business schools would discuss the case. Entrepreneurs would study the lessons. Lawyers would use it as a powerful example, not because the story was unique, but because it happens far more often than people realize. Businesses fail every year because ownership was never clearly defined. Partnerships collapse because expectations were never written down. Friendships end because trust was expected to replace documentation. The tragedy is that most of these problems are entirely preventable. A few hours with a lawyer, a simple written agreement, a clear document outlining ownership and responsibilities. All of these things could have prevented the pain, the conflict, and the loss. A written agreement cannot guarantee friendship. A contract cannot prevent every dispute. But clear documentation creates clarity, and clarity prevents confusion. Clarity protects relationships. Clarity ensures that everyone is on the same page. Clarity provides a foundation for trust to grow. The real lesson of the handshake deal is not that trust is bad. Trust is essential. Every successful partnership requires trust. Without trust, no business can succeed. Without trust, no relationship can flourish. But trust should be supported by documentation, not replaced by it, because trust and contracts are not enemies. They are partners. They work together. They complement each other. The strongest businesses have both. Friendship and paperwork. Vision and accountability. Trust and verification. These are not opposing forces. They are two sides of the same coin. They are both necessary for long-term success. As for Daniel, Michael, and Samuel, they each continued their lives. They each found success in different ways. They each rebuilt their careers and their futures. But none of them ever forgot the lesson they learned. The lesson that cost them 6 years of friendship and a courtroom battle. A handshake may start a business. A handshake may symbolize trust and commitment. A handshake may create the foundation for something great, but only proper agreements protect it. Only written documentation ensures that everyone's rights are respected. Only clarity prevents confusion and conflict. Because in business, written agreements matters more than a handshake. The story of Daniel, Michael, and Samuel is not just a story about business. It is a story about human nature, about the choices we make and the consequences we face, about the tension between trust and protection, about the importance of learning from other people's mistakes. The three men started with a dream and a handshake. They ended with a courtroom and a broken friendship. Their story is a warning to every entrepreneur, a warning to every business owner, a warning to anyone who has ever trusted someone with their future. Trust is powerful. Trust is necessary. Trust is beautiful. But trust without documentation is dangerous. Trust without clarity is risky. Trust without protection is foolish. The handshake deal may feel right in the moment. It may feel like a symbol of friendship and commitment. But in the cold light of reality, it is never enough. Because in business, what is written often matters more than what is remembered. Protect your business. Protect your relationships. Protect your future. Document everything. Verify everything. Trust, but verify. This is the lesson of the handshake deal. Watch out the final scene on my next story, episode 1, The Dream Final Scene.